It all started with a text message. I was sitting in a dimly lit hotel room halfway across the country, staring at the ceiling. The day had been long. Meetings, presentations, and the kind of small talk that drains you more than the actual work. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I reached for it, expecting a message from my wife, Anna. She usually checked in around this time, asking how my day had gone, telling me about hers. We'd been married for 7 years, and even though things hadn't been perfect lately, I never doubted her love for me. But the message wasn't from Anna. It was from Mark, an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey man, you need to call me. It's important." I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening. Mark wasn't the type to reach out unless something was really wrong. My mind raced through possibilities. Had something happened to someone we knew? Was he in trouble? I dialed his number, my heart pounding as it rang. When he picked up, his voice was low, hesitant, like he was choosing his words carefully. "Listen, I don't know how to say this, but I saw Anna last night. She was with someone, at a bar. They looked close." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My chest tightened, and I had to remind myself to breathe. "What do you mean, close?" Mark sighed, and I could hear the discomfort in his voice. "I mean, they were all over each other." I didn't want to believe it either, but I thought you should know. I thanked him, my voice hollow, and hung up. My mind was racing. Anna had told me she was going to stay with her sister for the weekend while I was away. She'd even sent me a picture of them having dinner together, a selfie of the two of them smiling, glasses of wine in hand. But now I didn't know what to believe. I called Anna, my hands shaking. She picked up on the third ring, her voice cheerful, like nothing was wrong. "Hey babe, how's the trip going?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's fine. How's your weekend with your sister?" There was a pause, just a fraction of a second too long. "Oh, it's great. We've just been catching up, you know, girl stuff." My heart sank. She was lying to me. I could hear it in her voice. The slight hesitation, the way she rushed through her words. "Anna, I need you to be honest with me. Where are you right now?" Another pause. "I told you I'm at my sister's. Why are you acting so weird?" I closed my eyes, fighting back the anger and hurt that were bubbling up inside me. "Because Mark just called me. He saw you last night. At a bar. With someone." The line went silent. For a moment, I thought she'd hung up. Then, in a small, trembling voice, she said, "I can explain." But she didn't. Not really. She just kept saying it wasn't what it looked like, that it was a mistake, that she loved me and only me. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. I ended the call and sat there in the dark hotel room, my mind spinning. I thought about our life together, the promises we'd made, the dreams we'd shared. And now it felt like it was all crumbling apart. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of it all. By the time the sun came up, I'd made a decision. I was going to go home early. I needed to see Anna face to face, to look her in the eyes and hear the truth. But as I packed my bags and headed to the airport, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to change forever, and not for the better. The flight home felt like an eternity. I kept replaying the conversation with Anna in my head, trying to find some explanation, some way to make sense of it all. But no matter how I looked at it, the truth was staring me in the face. Anna had lied to me. She'd been with someone else. When I finally landed, I went straight home. My heart was pounding as I unlocked the door, half expecting to find her there, waiting for me. But the house was empty, quiet, too quiet. I dropped my bags and went to the bedroom. Everything looked the same as when I'd left. Our bed neatly made, her perfume on the dresser, the photo of us on our wedding day smiling back at me from the nightstand. But it all felt different now. Tainted. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. I didn't know what to do. Should I call her? Wait for her to come home? I felt like I was losing my mind. Finally, I heard the front door open. My heart leapt into my throat as I heard Anna's voice calling out, Hello? Is someone here? I stood up, my legs trembling, and walked out into the hallway. She was standing there, her coat still on, her eyes wide with surprise. "You're home early," she said, her voice shaky. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. She took a step toward me, her hands outstretched. "I'm so glad you're here. We need to talk." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Yeah, we do." We sat down in the living room, the tension between us so thick it was almost suffocating. Anna was twisting her hands in her lap, her eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an escape. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you." I stared at her, my heart breaking. All over again. "Then why did you do it, Anna? Why did you lie to me?" She looked down at her hands, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know. I was stupid. I was lonely. He was just there, and I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You call cheating on me a mistake?" She flinched, but didn't say anything. I stood up, pacing the room, trying to keep my anger in check. "Who was it, Anna? Who were you with?" She hesitated, then whispered. It was Jake." I stopped dead in my tracks. Jake, her old high school boyfriend. The one she'd always said was just a friend. The one I'd never worried about because she'd assured me there was nothing between them. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Jake? Are you serious?" She nodded, her face pale. "I'm so sorry. It was just one night. It didn't mean anything." I laughed bitterly. "It didn't mean anything? You destroyed our marriage, Anna. You destroyed everything we had. And you're telling me it didn't mean anything?" She started to cry harder, her shoulders shaking. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I love you. And I want to make this right. Please, just give me a chance." I looked at her, my heart breaking all over again. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could fix this, that we could move past it. But I didn't know if I could. I sat back down, my head in my hands. "I don't know, Anna. I don't know if I can forgive you." She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched my arm. "Please, just give me a chance. I'll do anything to make this right." I didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at the floor, trying to figure out what to do next. The days that followed were a blur. Anna and I barely spoke, the tension between us so thick it was almost suffocating. I couldn't look at her without feeling a mix of anger, hurt, and betrayal. She tried to apologize, to explain, but every word out of her mouth just made me feel worse. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus on anything except the fact that my wife had cheated on me. With Jake. The guy she'd always told me was just a friend. I started to spiral. I spent hours scrolling through old photos of us, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. I replayed every argument, every moment of tension, trying to find some clue that I'd missed. But no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't understand how we'd gotten here. Anna tried to give me space, but it was clear she was desperate to fix things. She cooked my favorite meals, left little notes around the house, even tried to initiate conversations about our future. But every time she reached out, I pulled away. I couldn't help it. The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. One night, after another silent dinner, Anna finally broke down. "I can't keep doing this," she said, her voice trembling. "I know, I messed up, but I can't keep living like this. I need to know if we're going to try to fix this, or if it's over." I looked at her, my heart aching. I wanted to tell her that we could fix it, that we could move past this. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded and said, "I don't know." The next day, I decided to do something I'd been avoiding. I reached out to Jake. I didn't know what I was hoping to achieve, but I needed to hear his side of the story. I needed to know if there was more to it than Anna was telling me. I found his number through an old mutual friend and sent him a text. "We need to talk." He responded almost immediately. "I figured you'd reach out. Meet me at the park, by the lake at 7. That evening I drove to the park, my stomach in knots. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I needed to do this. I needed to face him. Jake was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench by the water. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable. "Hey," he said, standing up. I nodded, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Let's walk." We started down the path, the silence between us heavy. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Why?" I asked, my voice low. "Why did you do it?" Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It wasn't planned. Man, it just happened. We ran into each other at the bar, and one thing led to another." I stopped walking and turned to face him. "That's it? That's your excuse? It just happened?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. "I'm not trying to make excuses. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. And I'm sorry." I stared at him, my anger bubbling up. "You're sorry? That's all you have to say? You destroyed my marriage. And you're sorry?" Jake looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I know it doesn't mean much, but I never meant for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." I laughed bitterly. "Well, you did. And now I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Or her." We stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of everything hanging between us. Finally, Jake spoke again. "I'll stay out of your lives. I won't contact her again. I promise." I nodded, my throat tight. "You better not." I turned and walked away, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do with everything I was feeling. Part of me wanted to forgive Anna, to try to move past this. But another part of me couldn't let go of the betrayal. When I got home, Anna was waiting for me. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes filled with hope and fear. "How did it go?" she asked softly. I sat down across from her, my heart heavy. "I talked to Jake." She nodded, her hands twisting in her lap. "And?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "He said it wasn't planned, that it just happened." Anna looked down, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you." I looked at her, my heart breaking all over again. "I know you didn't, but that doesn't change what happened." She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched mine. "Please, just give me a chance to make this right. I'll do anything." I looked at her, my mind racing. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could fix this. But I didn't know if I could. Finally, I nodded. "We'll take it one day at a time, but I can't promise anything." Anna nodded, her tears falling faster. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance." I didn't respond. I just sat there, staring at the floor, trying to figure out what to do next. The next few weeks were a strange mix of tension and tentative hope. Anna and I were trying to navigate this new, fragile version of our relationship. We started couples therapy, something I never thought we'd need. The first session was brutal. Sitting in that small, overly bright room with a stranger dissecting our marriage felt like having salt poured into an open wound. But as much as it hurt, I knew we needed it. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Patel, was calm and patient. She didn't take sides, which I appreciated, but she also didn't let either of us off the hook. "Infidelity is a symptom, not the root problem," she said during one session. "We need to figure out what led to this moment. What was missing in your relationship that made this happen?" I didn't have an answer. Neither did Anna. But as the sessions went on, things started to come to the surface. Anna admitted she'd been feeling lonely, disconnected. She said she felt like I'd been prioritizing work over her, that she didn't feel seen or appreciated. Hearing that hurt, but it also made me realize how much I'd been neglecting her. I wasn't innocent in all of this. I'd been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder, on providing for us, that I'd stopped being present in our marriage. I'd stopped noticing the little things, the way she'd light up when I complimented her cooking, the way she'd curl up next to me on the couch when we watched movies. I'd taken her for granted, and now we were paying the price. But even as we started to unpack all of this, the betrayal still hung over us like a dark cloud. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my mind racing with images of Anna and Jake, together. I'd feel a surge of anger, of hurt, and I'd have to remind myself that we were trying to move forward. But it wasn't easy. One night, after a particularly rough therapy session, Anna and I got into a fight. It started small, something about how I'd forgotten to take out the trash, but it quickly escalated. "You're not even trying," Anna shouted, her voice breaking. "You say you want to fix this, but you're just going through the motions," I snapped. "You're one to talk about trying. You're the one who cheated, remember? You're the one who destroyed everything." Anna flinched like I'd slapped her. She took a step back, her eyes filled with tears. "I know what I did," she said quietly. "And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. But you have to meet me halfway. You have to let me in." I didn't respond, just stood there, my chest heaving, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Finally, I turned and walked out of the room. I needed space. I needed to breathe. I ended up driving to Mark's place. He'd been my best friend since college, and even though we didn't talk as much as we used to, I knew he'd be there for me. When I showed up at his door, he took one look at me and said, "Come on in, I'll grab us a beer." We sat on his couch, the TV playing some sports game in the background, and I told him everything. About the therapy, about the fight, about how I didn't know if I could ever truly forgive Anna. Mark listened quietly, nodding along. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "Look, man, I'm not going to tell you what to do. This is your life, your marriage. But I will say this. If you're going to stay, you have to really commit to it. You can't keep throwing the affair in her face every time you fight. That's not fair to either of you." I knew he was right. But knowing something and doing it were two very different things. When I got home that night, Anna was waiting for me. She was sitting on the couch, her knees pulled up to her chest, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as I walked in. "I shouldn't have yelled at you. I know this is hard for you, too." I sat down next to her, my heart heavy. "I'm sorry, too. I shouldn't have thrown the affair in your face. It's hard, Anna. It's really hard." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. And I hate that I'm the reason you're hurting. I hate that I did this to us." I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "We're both hurting, but we're trying. That has to count for something, right?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with hope. "It does. It counts for everything." We sat there for a while, holding hands, not saying much. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The next few weeks were better. Not perfect, but better. We started to find a rhythm again, a way to be around each other without the constant tension. We went on dates, something we hadn't done in years. We talked, really talked, about our hopes, our fears, our dreams. It felt like we were rediscovering each other. But even as things improved, the shadow of what had happened still lingered. I'd catch myself watching Anna sometimes, wondering if she was thinking about Jake, if she regretted what she'd done. I'd wonder if she still loved me the way she used to, or if I was just the safe choice. One night, as we were lying in bed, I finally worked up the courage to ask her, "Do you regret it?" Anna turned to look at me, her eyes wide. "Regret what?" "What happened with Jake. Do you regret it?" She was quiet for a long time, and for a moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she said, "I regret hurting you. I regret betraying your trust. But I don't regret that it happened." I felt a stab of pain in my chest. "Why?" She took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "Because it made me realize how much I was taking you for granted. It made me realize how much I love you, how much I don't want to lose you." I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to be angry, to feel betrayed all over again. But another part of me understood what she was saying. We lay there in silence for a while, the weight of everything hanging between us. Finally, I reached out and took her hand. "I love you too," I said quietly. "And I don't want to lose you either." It wasn't a perfect resolution. It wasn't a happily ever after. But it was a step forward. And for now, that was enough. Months passed, and slowly, things began to feel normal. Not the same as before. Nothing could ever be the same as before, but a new kind of normal. Anna and I were learning how to be together again, how to trust each other again. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the weight of what had happened felt unbearable. But we were trying, and for the most part, it felt like we were making progress. But then out of nowhere, Jake came back into the picture. It started with a text message. Anna was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to snoop, I really wasn't. But the screen lit up, and I couldn't help but see the name, Jake. My heart stopped. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling, and read the message. Hey, I know I shouldn't be texting you, but I can't stop thinking about you. Can we talk? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All the progress we'd made, all the trust we'd been rebuilding, it felt like it was crumbling in an instant. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront Anna? Should I wait and see if she told me about it? I was paralyzed with indecision. When Anna came out of the shower, I was still standing in the kitchen, her phone in my hand. She took one look at me and knew something was wrong. What's going on? She asked, her voice cautious. I held up the phone, my hand shaking. Jake texted you. Her face went pale. She took the phone from me and read the message, her expression unreadable. When she looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. I didn't ask him to text me, she said quickly. I swear I didn't. I believed her. But that didn't make it hurt any less. What are you going to do? I asked, my voice tight. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. You need to tell him to leave you alone. You need to block his number. If you're serious about us, about fixing this, you can't have him in your life. Anna nodded, her hands trembling as she typed out a response. I watched as she sent the message, then blocked his number. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with fear and hope. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't say anything. I just pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly as she cried. I didn't know if this was the right thing to do, if we were really going to be okay, but in that moment I knew I wasn't ready to give up on us. The next few weeks were tense. Jake's text had reopened old wounds, and it felt like we were back at square one. Anna was doing everything she could to prove her commitment to me. She was more attentive, more affectionate, more open, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I started to spiral again. I found myself checking Anna's phone when she wasn't looking, scrolling through her messages, her social media, looking for any sign that she was still in contact with Jake. I knew it was wrong, that it was a violation of her privacy, but I couldn't help myself. I was terrified of being blindsided again. One night, Anna caught me. I was sitting on the couch, her phone in my hand when she walked into the room. She froze, her eyes wide with hurt and anger. What are you doing? She asked, her voice trembling. I felt a surge of guilt, but I also felt defensive. I needed to know, I said, my voice tight. I needed to know if you were still talking to him. Anna took a step back, her face pale. You don't trust me, she said quietly. After everything we've been through, after everything I've done to prove myself to you, you still don't trust me. I didn't know what to say. She was right. I didn't trust her. Not completely. And I didn't know if I ever would. Anna sat down across from me, her hands clenched in her lap. I can't keep living like this, she said, her voice breaking. I can't keep trying to prove myself to you if you're never going to trust me again. I looked at her, my heart aching. I want to trust you, I said quietly. But it's hard. Every time I start to feel like we're getting back on track, something happens, and it all comes rushing back. Anna nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know. And I hate that I did this to us. I hate that I made you feel this way. But I can't change the past. All I can do is try to be better, to prove to you that I'm worth trusting again. I didn't respond. I just sat there, staring at the floor, trying to figure out what to do next. The next day, I decided to do something I'd been avoiding. I reached out to Jake again. I didn't know what I was hoping to achieve, but I needed to hear from him directly that he was out of our lives for good. I texted him, "We need to talk. Meet me at the park." He responded almost immediately. "Okay." That evening, I drove to the park, my stomach in knots. Jake was already there, sitting on a bench by the water. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable. "Hey," he said, standing up. I nodded, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Let's walk." We started down the path, the silence between us heavy. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Why did you text her?" I asked, my voice low. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. I guess I was feeling nostalgic. I thought maybe we could talk, clear the air." I stopped, walking, and turned to face him. "Clear the air? Are you serious? You think you can just waltz back into her life and clear the air after what you did?" Jake looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. But I care about Anna. I always have, and I just wanted to make sure she was okay." I stared at him, my anger bubbling up. "She's not okay. Because of you. Because of what you did. She's not okay. And neither am I." Jake looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I know. And I hate that I'm the reason you're both hurting. But I can't change what happened. All I can do is try to make it right." I laughed bitterly. "You can't make it right. The only thing you can do is stay out of our lives. For good." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "I will. I promise." I didn't know if I believed him, but I knew I'd done all I could. I turned and walked away, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do with everything I was feeling. Part of me wanted to forgive Anna, to try to move past this. But another, part of me couldn't let go of the betrayal. When I got home, Anna was waiting for me. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes filled with hope and fear. "How did it go?" she asked softly. I sat down across from her, my heart heavy. "I talked to Jake," she nodded, her hands twisting in her lap. "And?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "He promised to stay out of our lives. For good." Anna looked down, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you." I looked at her, my heart breaking all over again. "I know you didn't, but that doesn't change what happened." She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched mine. "Please, just give me a chance to make this right. I'll do anything." I looked at her, my mind racing. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could fix this, but I didn't know if I could. Finally, I nodded. "We'll take it one day at a time. But I can't promise anything." Anna nodded, her tears falling faster. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance." I didn't respond. I just sat there, staring at the floor, trying to figure out what to do next. The months that followed were a mix of progress and setbacks. Anna and I were trying to rebuild our relationship, but it felt like we were walking on a tightrope. One wrong move, and everything could come crashing down. We continued with therapy, and while it helped, it also brought up a lot of painful truths. We had to confront not just the infidelity, but the cracks in our marriage that had been there long before Jake ever entered the picture. One of the hardest things was learning to trust again. I wanted to believe Anna when she said she was committed to us, but the fear of being hurt again was always there, lurking in the back of my mind. I found myself second-guessing everything: her tone of voice, her body language, the way she looked at her phone. It was exhausting, and I knew it wasn't fair to either of us. But I didn't know how to let go of the fear. Anna, to her credit, was patient. She understood why I was struggling, and she did everything she could to reassure me. She was more transparent than ever, sharing her phone passcode, letting me know where she was going, who she was with. But even with all that, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. Then, one evening, something happened that changed everything. We were sitting on the couch, watching a movie, when Anna's phone buzzed. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. She quickly put the phone down, but I'd already seen the name, Jake. My heart sank. What did he want? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Anna looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt. He texted me. He said he's moving away and wanted to say goodbye. I felt a surge of anger, but I tried to stay calm. And what did you say? She shook her head. I didn't respond. I swear I didn't. I was going to tell you about it, but I didn't know how. I took a deep breath, trying to process what she was saying. Part of me wanted to be angry, to accuse her of hiding things from me again. But another part of me understood how hard it must have been for her to tell me. Why didn't you just tell me right away? I asked, my voice softer now. Anna looked down, her hands trembling, because I was scared. I didn't want you to think I was still talking to him. I didn't want to lose you again. I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. You're not going to lose me. But you have to be honest with me. Anna, even when it's hard, she nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I'm sorry. I'll do better. I promise. We sat there for a while, holding hands, not saying much. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like a step forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. As time went on, things started to improve. Slowly but surely, we began to rebuild the trust that had been broken. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt and fear, but we were committed to making it work. We started to find joy in the little things again, cooking dinner together, going for walks, laughing at stupid jokes. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, and it was beautiful. But even as we moved forward, the past was always there, a shadow lurking in the background. I knew it would always be a part of our story, but I was starting to believe that it didn't have to define us. We could choose to learn from it, to grow from it, and to build something stronger because of it. One night, as we were lying in bed, Anna turned to me and said, "Do you think we'll ever be okay?" I looked at her, my heart full. "I think we already are." She smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "I love you." "I love you too," I said, pulling her close. And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. To everyone who's been following this story, thank you for sticking with me until the end. I know it wasn't easy to hear, and I know it brought up a lot of emotions for some of you. But I hope it also gave you hope. Hope that even when things seem impossible, there's always a way forward. It might not be easy, and it might not be perfect, but it's worth it. If you've been through something similar, I want you to know that you're not alone. It's okay to feel hurt, to feel angry, to feel lost, but it's also okay to forgive, to heal, and to move forward. You deserve happiness and you deserve love. Don't ever forget that. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, please check out my other videos. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other. See you next time.